The party ended the way most of our nights did, too late, too loud, and heavy with things that shouldn't have happened. His laughter still echoed in my ears as I stepped out into the cold, the door closing behind me with a soft finality that felt louder than it should have. The music inside blurred into a dull thump, then disappeared altogether, leaving me alone with the street and my thoughts. I told myself I should feel happy. I had just spent hours pretending I belonged somewhere I didn't, smiling too much, touching too freely, lying without speaking. Instead, guilt followed me like a second shadow. Every step away from his house felt like a step deeper into something I couldn't undo. The road was quiet. Street lights flickered, casting long, broken shapes across the pavement. My phone buzzed once, his name, but I didn't look. I already knew what it would say. Did you get home safe? The irony almost made me laugh. That's when I heard the voice. Hey, you okay? I slowed, my heart tightening. A boy stood a few steps ahead, half hidden by the dark. I couldn't clearly see his face, only the outline of someone younger, unfamiliar. He spoke again, casually, like this was nothing more than coincidence. It's late. This area's not safe. I should have kept walking. I knew that. Even then, a quiet voice inside me warned me to cross the street, to pretend I hadn't heard. But exhaustion has a way of softening instincts. So does guilt. I nodded, murmured something polite, and kept moving, too slowly. He walked beside me now. Not close, but close enough. His presence pressed against my awareness, making the night feel smaller. I noticed things I hadn't before, the absence of other footsteps, the way the wind carried every sound too clearly. Where are you headed? He asked. I hesitated. My answers felt wrong no matter what I chose. I gave him a vague direction, hoping that would be the end of it. Instead, he smiled, a gesture I felt rather than saw. There's a shortcut, he said. My place is just there. You can wait, rest a bit. Every part of me tightened. My chest felt hollow, like I'd missed a step on a staircase. I thought of the party, of the choices that had already led me here. I thought of how tired I was of thinking. I'm fine, I said, though my voice didn't agree. He stopped walking. I stopped too, without meaning to. The streetlight behind us flickered, then steadied. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. You don't look fine, he said softly. Something shifted then. Not a sound, not a touch, just a sudden understanding that I no longer had control of how this night would end. Fear crept in slowly, like cold seeping through fabric. I wanted to run, to scream, to rewind time to the moment I stepped out of that house. But my feet stayed where they were. And as the night closed in around us, one thought repeated in my mind, louder than all the others. I should never have walked home alone. Morning came without relief. Light slipped through the curtains like it was unsure whether it belonged here, touching the walls, the floor, my face. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that if I didn't move, the night might loosen its grip on me. It didn't. It sat heavy on my chest, pressing the air out slowly, patiently. I replayed everything, not in order, not clearly. Just fragments. The sound of my own breathing. The streetlight flickering. That moment when fear arrived quietly and refused to leave. I told myself not to think about it, but my mind didn't listen. It never does when it matters most. I went to the bathroom and avoided my reflection. Mirrors felt accusatory, like they were waiting for an explanation I didn't have. The water ran longer than necessary as I scrubbed my hands again and again, as if guilt and memory could be washed away with enough effort. My skin felt raw, but still, I wasn't clean. Why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you scream? Why were you there at all? The questions stacked on top of each other until I couldn't tell which ones belonged to fear and which ones belonged to shame. Somewhere between them lived the truth I wasn't ready to touch. My phone buzzed. I flinched. A message from him, the man whose party I had just left, the man who wasn't supposed to matter this much. Last night was amazing. I keep thinking about you. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, my stomach twisting. Amazing. The word echoed cruelly in my head. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to answer like nothing had happened. I did neither. Silence felt safer. I told myself I couldn't talk about it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Saying it out loud would make it real, and real things demanded consequences. Consequences I wasn't strong enough to face. So I folded the night into a corner of my mind, pushed it down beneath layers of excuses and self-blame. You shouldn't have trusted him. You shouldn't have been there. You're already doing something wrong. Why would this be any different? The affair had already taught me how to lie convincingly, how to carry secrets with a steady face. This was just another one, I told myself. Heavier, yes, but still mine to carry. As the day dragged on, normal sounds felt wrong. Laughter outside, traffic, a neighbor's music playing too loudly. Life was continuing as if nothing had shifted, as if something inside me hadn't cracked open and quietly rearranged itself. By evening, I had mastered the art of pretending again. I answered messages with short replies. I smiled at the right moments. I avoided anything that required too much feeling. But in the quiet spaces, between breaths, between thoughts, the same realization kept surfacing, unwelcome and persistent. The night hadn't ended when I made it home. It had followed me, and it wasn't going to let me forget. Something changed after that night, even though I tried to pretend it hadn't. I carried myself the same way, wore the same expressions, answered messages with practiced ease, but inside, everything felt misaligned, like a song playing half a beat too slow. He noticed first. You're quiet, he said one evening, his voice gentle but searching. We were sitting close, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him without wanting to lean in. Once, that closeness had thrilled me. Now it made my chest tighten. I'm just tired, I replied. It was becoming my favorite lie because it sounded believable, and because it wasn't entirely untrue. His hand brushed mine, familiar, possessive in a way I used to crave. My body reacted before my mind could stop it, a sharp pull backward, subtle but unmistakable. He paused, confusion flickering across his face. Did I do something? The question stayed with me long after the moment passed. Had he, or had I finally reached the point where desire could no longer drown out the weight of everything else? The affair had once been an escape, a space where I felt seen without being known. Now it felt like another room with no windows. At home, things weren't easier. My partner watched me more closely than before, as if sensing the distance even when he couldn't name it. His questions were ordinary. How was your day? You seem distracted. But they landed heavily, each one another reminder of how fragile the balance had become. I hated myself most in those moments, when guilt mixed with resentment, when I wished he would either accuse me or stop looking at me like that. Nights were the worst. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by thoughts I didn't invite. The street, the silence, the way fear had settled in without asking permission. Sometimes I'd wake suddenly, heart racing, convinced I had heard footsteps or a voice calling out. Other times, it was the memory of my own hesitation that haunted me, the pause where everything could have gone differently, or maybe not at all. I stopped answering messages as quickly. I avoided plans. I told myself I needed space, but what I really needed was honesty, and that felt impossible. Telling the truth meant admitting too much, the affair, the fear, the way both had tangled together until I couldn't separate one from the other. He reached for me again one night, his touch tentative now, unsure. I let it happen, but I felt distant, like I was watching from somewhere else. The thrill was gone, replaced by a dull ache and a quiet question I couldn't silence. What am I still doing here? I realized then that secrecy doesn't just hide things, it changes them. What once felt exciting had turned heavy, weighted by everything unsaid. Every lie demanded another. Every silence widened the distance between who I was and who I pretended to be. And beneath it all, one fear kept growing, steady and relentless. If I didn't speak soon, the truth would find its own way out. I stood at the edge of a decision for longer than I want to admit. Days passed, then weeks, each one blurring into the next. On the surface, life looked unchanged. Conversations happened, meals were shared, messages were sent and ignored. But underneath, something inside me was quietly unraveling. I felt like I was holding my breath all the time, afraid that the moment I exhaled, everything would collapse. The street where it happened appeared in my dreams before I saw it again in real life. When I finally did, It was by accident, a wrong turn, a distracted moment. My heart raced as the familiar streetlight came into view, still flickering, still indifferent. Nothing marked the place. No sign, no warning, just an ordinary stretch of road pretending nothing had ever happened. I stopped walking. For a brief moment, I considered turning back, erasing the sight before it settled too deeply into me. But I didn't. I stood there, letting the memory wash over me, steady and unforgiving. I realized then that I had been waiting for something external, an apology, a confrontation, a sign that I was allowed to speak. None of it was coming. That night, my phone buzzed again. A message from him, the affair that no longer felt like an escape. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen, my reflection faintly visible in the dark glass. So many words lived inside me, pressing to be let out. I thought about telling him everything. I thought about ending it without explanation. I thought about doing nothing at all. Then my partner's voice floated in from the other room, casual, unaware. He asked if I wanted tea. Such a small question. Such a normal one. It hurt more than accusations ever could. "I'll be there in a minute," I said. I opened a new message. I typed. I deleted. Typed again. My fingers trembled, not from fear this time, but from clarity. I understood something I hadn't before, that silence hadn't protected me. It had only prolonged the damage, stretching one night into countless others. Still, when the moment came, I didn't confess. Not fully. Not yet. Instead, I chose distance. I let the affair fade into unanswered messages and unfinished conversations. I stepped away without explanation, carrying the truth with me like unfinished business. As I lay in bed later, staring into the dark, I knew this wasn't an ending. It was a pause, a fragile, uncertain one. Some truths wait patiently, some secrets grow louder with time. And as sleep finally pulled me under, one question echoed softly in my mind, unresolved and persistent. When the truth finally demands to be heard, will I be brave enough to speak? If you want, I can now. Rewrite this for YouTube narration polish. Create visual prompts for each part. Generate title, description, and hashtags. Adjust the ending to be darker or more hopeful. Just say the word.